Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of our attendees joining us today for this latest Data Science Central webinar. This is Bill Voorhees, your host. I'm the Editorial Director with Data Science Central and also Chief Data Scientist for Data Magnum. And I'd like to start off our event today by thanking TIBCO for sponsoring today's event. TIBCO is an integral supporter of the Data Science Central community, and we're honored to have them sponsoring our event today. I'd also like to take this opportunity to mention and show our appreciation for some of our other recent sponsors, including Databricks, Alteryx, IBM, Semantic Research, TitlesCale, and Vertica, to name just a few. Now, audience members, we're going to have a demo in today's presentation, and to be able to see that best, please remind you that you should have your Java updated, and please do not use incognito mode in your browser or you won't be able to see what's going on. Now, I do want to remind you that past webinars are available on demand at datasciencecentral.com, and if you haven't had the opportunity to view them, I encourage you to take a look. They provide very useful insight into a wide variety of topics of interest to our data science community. So today's webinar is entitled Data Viz, Death to Flat Dashboards. And before we begin, I'd like to briefly review the format of today's webinar. Today's event will be an hour long. We'll have two presenters that I'll introduce in just a minute. There'll be 10 or 15 minutes of QA following the presentation. And this event is being recorded and will be available on datasciencecentral.com later this afternoon following today's live event. I'd also like to encourage our attendees to provide questions throughout the presentation, as we'll be reviewing and presenting them on your behalf during the QA portion of today's event. Well, I'm very pleased to introduce today's speakers, Hector Martinez and Lou Bajek-Jorgen with TIBCO. Now, Hector is a staff solutions consultant at TIBCO Software. He's been working with TIBCO's Spotfire analytics platform for over 11 years and is focused on empowering customers with enterprise analytic solutions. Now, Lou Bajek-Jorgen leads product strategy for streaming and advanced analytics at TIBCO Software, including the development of TIBCO Enterprise Runtime for R, otherwise known as TERR. Lou frequently speaks and tweets about the value of TIBCO Analytics Platform for getting the most insight out of your data. Hector, Lou, thanks for being with us today. We're looking forward to your presentation. Now, there are many options today to simply visualize your data, but that's no longer enough to be competitive. To get the most out of your data and to empower everyone in your organization to make better decisions with your data, you need far more than just pretty charts. To compete, organizations need to leverage every possible tool to get the deepest insight into your data, make smarter decisions, and respond quickly to emerging opportunities and threats. So in today's Data Science Central webinar, you'll learn how Spotfire will enable you to build smart analytical applications such as inline data wrangling, recommendation-driven visualizations, beautiful maps, point-and-click data science tools, and leveraging machine learning from our community and beyond. So Lou, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. You can begin as soon as you're ready to go.
Thank you, Bill. So as Bill mentioned, we're going to be talking about how how Spotfire enables you to build smart analytic applications and really go beyond simple, pretty pictures and flat dashboards, but to get deeper insight into your data. So I'll be talking about how Spotfire views, visualizing and analyzing data, how the features of Spotfire and the platform itself really enables a wide variety of users to get the deepest insight into their data. And then periodically I'll be handing it off to Hector for him to illustrate some of these points with demos. And so we're diving right in. There are many ways out there to visualize your data, and certainly Spotfire is among the most beautiful and powerful ways of doing that. Spotfire not only provides beautiful visualizations and dashboards and applications such as those you see here, but our focus is really allowing you to immerse yourself in the data, to really wrestle with it, analyze it, get the deepest insight that you can within that. and to do that all within the Spotfire environment, not having to leave the environment to accomplish other tasks, but really being able to manage the full analytic process from preparing your data to sharing your insights with others, all within a single platform. Now, to do this, we focus on making as many smart capabilities as possible to help you build applications that get the deepest insight into your data, applications that are highly configurable and extensible to meet your needs over time, and really help you collaborate with your colleagues. Now, there are many different ways to visualize your data, but once you visualize your data, lots of other questions come up. Questions such as, well, I can visualize my data, but how will I transform it into the shape that I need in order to get the most insight? Will I need to leave the environment I'm in order to do that? How will I know the best way to visualize the data? Many people tend to go to one or two charts that they're most familiar with, but there might be other chart types out there that will give you deeper insight and help you communicate your insights better to others. If you're looking at a handful of variables, then it's easy to visualize the relationships between them. But when you start looking at dozens or hundreds or thousands of variables, then you need some smarter capabilities to spot correlations and relationships in that data using techniques such as machine learning. Once you start to understand those relationships, the questions come up of how do I predict what's going to happen next based on those relationships, rather than just assuming that the line on my chart will continue as is. And then there might be others in my organization who already have developed deeper insights into the data. Perhaps they've developed predictive models or other scripts in R or Python, SAS or MATLAB. How do I leverage their insights and unlock the value that they've created? Once I develop these insights, how do I share them with others? How do I communicate them in an effective way? How do I take action on these insights to move forward in my organization? And how can I be informed on something that's happening in my data, even if I'm not visualizing it at that moment? So visualizations are great. Visualizations are powerful. They're a key aspect to understanding your data. But the question is, depending on what platform you're in, am I going to be able to accomplish these tasks without buying 8 new tools? And you want this deeper level of analysis because there's many different ways to get from data to an insight, which leads to a decision, which leads to taking action. Depending on the how smart your analysis is, how powerful your analysis is, you might need a lot of human interpretation before you can get to that, making that decision. But as you move from just looking at what happened and why to predicting what will happen and what should I do, that's where we get into the realm of really accelerating the whole process from data to decision and action. And this might be getting to the point of decision support, where a human is getting and making that final decision and taking action, or decision automation, where ultimately that decision is taken automatically based on what's happened in the past, and that action is taken immediately, such as automatically sending out a marketing offer, automatically shutting down a piece of equipment as it starts to overheat, automatically scheduling a maintenance call based on the status of some piece of equipment, and so on. And of course, getting to these smarter analyses can be difficult because there's a scarcity of data science skills out there. In general, we see 3 large populations. One is the general population, people who are consumers of analyses, people who know the business, understand the challenges that the business face, but they don't have the skills or background to really do analytically complex tasks. And so it's important that we provide them applications to help walk them through this decision process. On the far right, we have the much smaller group of data scientists. Those who are highly skilled in analytics can really do analytically very complex tasks, but the challenge is there's not enough of them out there. And so we focus on empowering the citizen data scientist, the analyst, the engineer, the scientist, those who have some appreciation of analytic complexity. They might not have the deep training of a data scientist, but certainly they have the ability to understand the data, understand what needs to be done, and create things that can be shared with the general population. And so our focus is twofold. One It's helping the citizen data scientists, the analysts, et cetera, leverage the insights, the IP created by the data scientists to create applications that can be shared with the general population. And two, helping citizen data scientists up-level their skills to increase their capability to help them do analytically more and more complex tasks by making those tasks immersive and easy within a single platform. And so there's many sources out there that are saying it's time to become this citizen data scientist, that the analysts out there, the engineers, the scientists, that this is the time for you to go beyond visualizing your data, beyond just pretty pictures and the same old flat dashboards, and really to increase your skills and tackle more analytically complex things. Gartner released a couple of predictions recently. One, that by 2019, that there'll be more advanced analysis produced by citizen data scientists than by traditional data scientists. And by 2020, a plurality of data science tasks will be automated. And this will increase in a lot of additional productivity and broader usage by citizen data scientists. But to really enable that, you need the right tools. And Spotfire is the platform to provide that. We focus on helping people explore their data faster, get to that action sooner, move their business farther and faster by providing this smart, unified, secure analytics experience. And we do that with several sets of features. First is around smart visual analytics. Rather than the same old single charts and a very manual analysis, we provide instant linked views where you get multiple different visualizations of your data that are automatically tied together. Very importantly, we provide smart recommendations, so you can very quickly get some recommendations on what is the best way to visualize this data. What chart should I use that perhaps I would not have thought of because I'm not familiar with them? Rich mapping capability with geoanalytics, and the ability to build analytic applications that you can share with others so they can leverage your insights in their own decision-making process. Second, data wrangling. And data wrangling is all about analyzing and wrangling your data together, not having to step out of your analysis into another environment, not having to go upstream to talk to IT about doing the data transformations you need, but being able to do that directly within your analysis in an iterative way, as is often critical. As you visualize and analyze, you might realize you need to transform your data in some way in order to enhance that analysis. And in doing these transformations, we automatically document the flow of them so you can understand what's happened, have that documentation, and be able to reuse it, all within a governable framework. On the data science side of things, we have an inbuilt native R engine called TIBCO Enterprise Runtime for R, or TERR, which allows us to embed live R computations within the Spotfire environment in a variety of powerful ways. We also can plug into a variety of other environments, such as Python, KNIME, SAS, MATLAB, and more, which allows you to leverage the creation of these other data scientists within the Spotfire framework. Fourth, we've got a rich history around streaming analytics at TIBCO, which allows you to tie into streaming data, link alerts on what's happening in that streaming data, automatically take actions based on that, and do this all in a very low-code way, which I'll be talking about in a minute. And then finally, all these features are built on a very simple to deploy, simple to admin and scale platform, where we take some of the best aspects of cloud architecture in terms of scalability and management, and make that available both to customers that are moving to the cloud, both customers that stay on-prem, and customers that are working in hybrid environments. And so with that, we'll dive into each of these areas in a little bit more depth. First off, smart visual analytics. As I mentioned, Spotfire provides recommendation-driven insights so that you can very quickly get recommendations on which visualizations best fit your data. Get multiple perspectives on your data, so not a single page, not a single view of the data, but automatically linked views. And visualizations are only useful if they're responsive. So we have the fastest data engine for working with data, both in memory as well as data that stays within the data source. Rich, beautiful, multi-layer maps that Hector will be showing in a moment. And in creating these visualizations and analysis, it's critical that you can collaborate with your peers. And so we make it easy to have threaded, searchable conversations within a Spotfire analysis, to mark and annotate your graphics, bookmark views so you can go back to them later, or that you can share a specific view of your data with your colleagues. And once you create these visualizations and insights, it's easy to create applications that can be shared with others so they can follow the process that you did in making their own decisions, and do this all on top of a huge variety of data sources. Now, Hector will be showing us some of these aspects around recommendations and mapping in a moment. And as he prepares his demo, I just want to talk about the wide variety of different data sets that are available out there. We tie into not only big data and cloud sources and proprietary sources, but some of the real-time data sources within the TIBCO environment. And Hector, over to you.
Thank you, Lou. So what I'd like to do is very quickly review some of the things that we're going to demo. We're going to demo in different sections, and then I'll give the ball back to Lou. But one of the things that Lou mentioned is being able to analyze information and look at data and wrangle the data or manipulate the data or interact with the data and modify it as you see fit. Sometimes, well, not sometimes, reality is that data is never clean. So rather than having to always go back to IT to try to fix it, we can always leverage Spotfire to let that analysis continue while IT is trying to fix it, and you feed that back to them. One of the ways that we do that is doing this inline data wrangling. And the way that we do that is, of course, when you bring data and you're analyzing it in Spotfire, you have this capability to be able to open and view the data, whether you're interacting with the data to see what it's like and you're profiling it to see what information is there, whether you want to add calculations to the columns or add rows to the data, you can with simple little dialogues that help you create additional content to it. But if you're interested to figure out what's happening with the data, you also have the ability to come in here and interrogate the data, and some people call it profiling, meaning that you can click on any individual columns and look at the information that is in there by viewing the distribution of the data. If the data is actually categorical in nature, it'll give you the distinct values. You can look at the unique values. And, of course, if you have information that you would like to manipulate, you can add information to be able to split it or, so we have different examples that allow you to do that. So you can change the data. So if data comes in a specific format, Spotfire does have the ability to very quickly allow you to change that data type without affecting its source. So even if you decide to later replace the data and update it, in the background, Spotfire has created metadata information and will update that data for you. And in your analysis, if it's a string, you can turn it into an integer or vice versa, and without actually affecting the source of where it came from. So these are different things that you can do with Spotfire. One of the other things that you can do is, for example, as you're interacting with the data, you can then decide to either group information, or maybe you found some kind of misspelling, or you want to reassign a label. Anywhere in any visualization, you have the ability to mark information and then group simply by right-clicking, do a group for mark and saying, this is mine, or group A, or whatever you want to give as that label. If it's misspelled, you can correct them, group them together, and now that information has now been grouped. And Spotfire is now actually created a formula in the background that if you replace the data, this will get recreated all on the fly. And what happens is in the background, this column that you see here, this region group, is now an actual formula that you can evaluate and modify as you see fit. So if we go interrogate that column, you can actually see the expression that was automatically generated by Spotfire without you needing to know anything about calculated columns or expressions. It's all done for you and taken care of for you. So if you replace the data, those will get created for you automatically. Now, these are very simple things that allow, that you can do within Spotfire. So the other thing that you can do as well is actually transform the data, meaning that if you would like to, pivot or unpivot, or for those folks that aren't familiar with those terms, if you want to make a wide data set into a tall and skinny data set because a particular analysis lends itself to, better in that format. Here's a quick example where I have a wide data set. Well, Spotfire makes it easy to, grab all those columns and do a simple right click and unpivot and immediately turn that data into a tall, skinny format, which of course now you can use that into a visualization and create the appropriate visualization as needed. So these are just a handful of simple, quick and easy clicks for your users to manipulate the data. For those folks that want to take it to the next level and actually do some more advanced transformations, you have the ability to insert transformations that allow you to either normalize, to pivot or unpivot, again, making something wide. Pivot means to make it wide from a tall and skinny, and unpivot means take something that's wide and make it tall and skinny. So you can apply all these different transformations on the data, and Spotfire will actually do all of this transformation for you and keep the source, so that way you can actually replace your data, and these transformations will get recreated for you automatically. So with that, I just wanted to at least highlight some of the things that Lou mentioned, and I'll go ahead and let him go back and continue with his demo, and I'll come back and show some of the recommendation visuals and some of the mapping capabilities.
So Hector, why don't you go right into the recommendations and mapping right now?
Okay. So just to save a little more time, so when it comes to recommendations, regardless of how you bring in the data, you can drag and drop data right into Spotfire, or you can open data from a database. And when you open it or when you bring data into Spotfire, you will get prompted with this little dialog. And what this dialog is this is a tool that Spotfire calls a recommendations dialog that helps a user try to learn a little bit about the data. So as you click the information anywhere, in these on the left-hand side are all of the columns for whatever data you brought in. And if you pick and choose, the tool will try to help you look at the data using your data and create examples. So if you have state, for example, the tool will say, well, I can group this information by state and show you that, in an analysis. And then if you decide to pick any type of visualization, the tool will come in here and configure it for you, and then you can just click on it, and it will allow you to very quickly go and create dashboards with the visualizations without needing to know anything about how to create them from scratch, although the tool does give you the ability to go and modify or tweak it or create anything from scratch, and you can just place them anywhere on your screen. These are all very interactive. And if you filter any information anywhere, of course, the tool will immediately respond. So they're all very dynamic, interactive visualizations. And the goal here is to create not a static, flat dashboard, but actually an interactive dashboard that allows a user to interact with the data, let them, decide what is of interest, let them filter to the appropriate information, to drilling down into a specific analysis. Now, this is all about how Spotfire tries to help the users get started in creating an analysis or a workflow. And whether you're using, your standard visualizations, whether they're scatter or bar charts or heat maps, Spotfire also leverages maps very heavily. Now, we have one of the strongest mapping features in the market from the analytics perspective, because we're able to actually have all of these different layers within a map. And if you're not familiar with layers, it's nothing more than allowing users to view different types of information on a map, whether the individual underlying map itself, or whether you want to overlay markers on them, whether you want to overlay features or polygons on them, if you want to overlay images, or WMS and TMS is basically a web mapping service or a tile mapping services. And these are different, the way that they work is these features can these are all examples here of the tile mapping service, but let me just show you how Spotfire can actually take all of these layers and put them together to create some kind of uniform, display for a user to come in here and let them drill down and look at information. And as the user drills down, you can see all I did was click on the little zoom in, and it turns on layers based off how you define them, because they can zoom and turn on, and as you keep zooming, you get more detail of what you're looking at, whether it's the individual maps themselves. And then, of course, maybe you want to turn some of those layers on and off, so that way you get additional insight for what you're seeing. And hopefully this comes through. I'm looking at the additional details for that map, and as you zoom in, that map will give you more and more details in that resolution, and hopefully we can see the different things of interest. So that way, of course, gives your users different ways to look at the data depending on what is of interest to them. Now, aside from it, of course, some folks may not be as heavily interested in leveraging geographical maps. Well, we can leverage the same mapping technology to leverage images. So if you have layouts of physical locations or layouts of body parts, for example, or physical objects, we can superimpose information on top of it to allow users to create some very nice, sophisticated visualizations and still be interactive. And then if you really want to take it to the next level, you can incorporate advanced analytic algorithms on top of it, because we have the ability to incorporate R and TIBCO's runtime for the enterprise runtime for R methods and functions that allows users to interact with them and create some very sophisticated graphs or visuals that can go and compute the different contour based off the data that you're looking at, whether they're hex bins, density maps, or if you have geographical, we can even go compute itineraries and distances from points to points. Or as I mentioned before, if you have physical locations, we can go and summarize points within the polygons and then summarize that information and show that to you. And we have a lot of these examples on our community, so please feel free to go look at a lot of these examples that I'm showing here. And with that, at least, I've covered some very simple and easy way to interact with the data. I've shown you some very quick and easy way to drag data in and start creating visualizations using some of the recommended visualizations, and then, of course, how we can leverage Spotfire Maps in your analysis. So with that, I'll go ahead and stop here and hand it over to Lou to talk a little bit more about how we can leverage the advanced analytics part.
Thanks, Hector. That was great. So as you can see, Spotfire is a killer combination. Its graphics are both smart and beautiful. And so Hector showed us a lot of the smart visual analytics capabilities, as well as the capabilities around inline data wrangling. We saw a bit of the visual grouping there. We saw some of the expression generation behind the scenes, the data profiling, the descriptive stats. And all these transformations, as they're done, are documented in a self-documenting visual workflow that you can edit and reuse. Next, the third major area that really makes smart applications possible in Spotfire is the point-and-click data science capabilities. And these are a range of capabilities aimed at a range of different types of users. There's lots of one-click calculations that make powerful methods easy to use, things like descriptive stats, line similarity, clustering, correlation, fitting, forecasting, predictive modeling, lots of capabilities that can be done directly from Spotfire without any scripting or coding. But embedded inside Spotfire is our commercial engine for the R language, TERR. And that means out of the box, without having to install anything else, it's easy to drop down and add R code into your visualizations, so that now any statistic from the R community can be part of a Spotfire visual aggregation, that as you change the axes, change the graphic, it automatically gets reapplied. can be leveraged in the expression language. So if you want to do more complex data transformations or create calculated columns using R, you can do that very easily. And then beyond that, in addition to just simply embedding R within expressions, we have a framework called data functions. And data functions are a way of passing in an arbitrary collection of data and parameters and whatnot into R or SAS or MATLAB or KNIME, doing a deep calculation within that and getting that result back within Spotfire, where it might generate one or more data tables that get visualized, individual parameters that update a dashboard, and so on. And by accessing these environments, we're also providing access into machine learning and deep learning platforms that are integrated with R and other environments. And critically, in order to make this all easy, we have a rich community on TIBCO Community where we can share these data science components with many capabilities available up there to freely downloadable that you can use to enhance your analyses out of the box, both to use them directly and use them as examples so you can start to learn how this works. Now, as I said, TERR, our TIBCO R engine, is embedded directly within Spotfire, which means you can write code directly there and then execute that code either locally under Spotfire on the desktop or on the server when you're running Spotfire on the web. All these TERR analytics, as well as analytics from other data science environments, are managed in the Spotfire library, so it makes it easy to reuse across your organization, and easy to deploy these TERR-powered applications to the web. So you can have not only a smart application for your own analysis, but build applications for others to use very easily. And as Hector just touched on, this enables you to do things like enhancing maps with R TERR scripts, with just a couple of lines of code, drawing contour lines based on calculations on the data, layering that on top of a Spotfire analysis or a Spotfire map, or doing things like optimizing a route using numerical optimization from within R so that you can, for example, optimize where to put your distribution centers and display that information on a map. And because you can do this in an application, put in a what-if analysis and update those calculations on demand as the end user asks and answers different questions. Now, our integration with data science environments is not limited to R. As I said, this opens up connections to many machine learning and deep learning environments. So that, for example, you could leverage a big data environment such as H2O to build your predictive models. And I'm going to hand it back off to Hector now to illustrate some of these data science components. And as Hector does that, as I mentioned, H2O is a big data environment, and so we can leverage that directly within Spotfire. And off to you, Hector.
Great. So one of the things that I wanted to wrap up here, as far as there's a couple of demos that I want to show and highlight. And the first one is, of course, what we can do with just point and click. And then the second is how we can leverage R in the community and your data scientists. So let me just start there. And as Lou mentioned, Spotfire is able to leverage all of these different statistical engines. And all of the demos for today, though, I'm going to talk and leverage TERR. Basically, it's TIBCO's R engine, only because it comes out of the box. It means it comes with Spotfire. Whereas some of these, you need to have those environments, but we can actually leverage them as well. So just to get it started, when you actually open up Spotfire, you have functionality at your fingertips with just simple clicks of your mouse. So for example, if you go to your tools menu, you can actually go to this data relationships section, and you can see that you have these abilities to do some simple algorithms, run ANOVA, linear regression, Spearman-R, Kruskal-Wallis, chi-squared. So you have some simple algorithms that you can run very quickly on your data, and when you run those models on your data, it will actually come back and give you summaries of whatever you've selected, and then based off the scores that it came back with, you can interact with them. So the goal here is to try to help you look at all of those parameters in a summarized form so that it helps you look at them, whether you're looking at it from a regression or an ANOVA. What you select will determine what you're viewing in that analysis. So these are some very simple tools that, again, come out of the box. If you're looking at time-based data and you're looking at any line chart, you can right-click and create a forecast on it, very quickly. Now, for your users that, don't need to know anything about forecasting, that's all they have to do. But for those folks that want to know a little bit more about it, they can go under the hood and look at the properties and see exactly what those lines and curves were doing and what algorithm it was using. In this case, it's a Holtz-Winters forecast, and they can edit the parameters if they want to add seasonality, whether it's additive or multiplicative, whatever functions or little options that they want to tweak, they can. And now this is a simplified diagram of leveraging the Holt-Winters forecast. If you want to leverage some other models, and I'll talk about that here shortly, we can. But we have a lot of these functionalities that are very quick and easy for the users to leverage. So for those citizen data scientists that want to leverage regression modeling, same under the tools menu, we have all these different tools, whether it's regression modeling, whether it's classification modeling, whether it's line similarity or hierarchical clustering. The goal here is to try to help a user leverage some of these out-of-the-box functionalities, very quick point-and-click functions that allow you to leverage the power of our analytical engine under the hood. Now, I've mentioned about some of the things that are out of the box, meaning that there's no coding involved. It's just a point and click on a configuration. But we also have this ability to leverage R right out of the box. What does that mean? Well, in our visualizations, we have the ability, all our visualizations are interactive, meaning that you can mark and select and look at the details, but you have the ability to go and look at the selections on the x-axis and the y-axis. You can control what these functions do. So, for example, if I wanted to tweak and change the colors, I can come in here and change my axis selectors and create a custom expression and type in a formula. Well, you can come in here and actually type in a formula that is R. So if those folks that are familiar with R, you can actually type in R code right into any of these axis selectors. So down here, there's an example of using a k-means cluster. But the good thing is that you're not tied to just running the script there. You can also create the script, but then parameterize the script. So then externally, you can create little property controls that allow you to tweak and change the inputs of that property or of that function. So here I'm executing a k-means cluster, and I'm passing in a parameter that allows me to determine how many clusters I want to group. And the user can create little properties that allows your consumer to change those properties. So these are different ways to allow users to leverage R right out of the box. And then if you don't want your users to know anything about R, you can actually create some expressions for them, and that's what we call these expression functions, meaning that someone that does know R can actually save it as a custom expression, and they would come here and edit it and type it in, and that becomes a pull-down menu. So anywhere that you have calculations, it will show up as a function, and it works the exact same way. Whether you typed it in or you use that expression, it works the exact same way. Now, these are, of course, inline editing of the functions. Where you really, really want to take it for your, or to leverage the power of R, or leverage the power of SAS, or leverage the power of MATLAB, or any of those other statistical tools, we can actually send not just the data and parameters, we can also return multiple objects, whether those objects are a value, a set of values, columns, or different tables, which is exactly what this is doing. So let me, rather than use this simple example, let me show you a little more sophisticated workflow and show you how it was created, because the purpose of the platform is to empower your consumers, empower your citizen data scientists, and leverage your data scientists. And let me show you just a couple of quick demos to summarize what that means. So this is another dashboard, another workflow, another analytical report that a user can come in here and view and interact, whether they're viewing it with the Spotfire analyst that's on your desktop or you're viewing this on the browser, it will work the same way for your consumer, for that general population. And you can add images and links to help explain what the purpose of this analysis. You can go create visualizations so they can interact and analyze the data, but you can go and create some very sophisticated algorithms. And this is where you can leverage machine learning in the background. But from the consumer standpoint of view, all they need to know is I have this analysis that I bring that has my data, and you as a user can determine what parameters you want to set and what variables you want to change. And when you change them, under the hood, you will see it recompute and update with that model, with that function, with that algorithm in the background. It'll recompute and show it on the screen without them knowing anything about that algorithm, about anything about statistics. They're just looking at their finished results. This is how you would empower your consumers. Your consumers can do some very sophisticated analysis without knowing anything about the statistics behind there. Now, how do we actually now empower our data scientists? For them, they may not know statistics, but all they need to know is I want to go and leverage this data function that is sitting in my library. And in my library, a data scientist has published a function that allows me to go and select. And I apologize, hopefully we can see this on the screen. Let me try it one more time. I'm having some technical issues, but we should be able to see it. There we go. Hopefully this comes out a little better. So this is the library. A data scientist has published some certified algorithms, some certified models for your citizen data scientists to leverage and incorporate into their analysis. And all they need to do is pick the appropriate algorithm, the appropriate model, the appropriate statistic that they want to apply, whether that is leveraging TERR, whether that's leveraging SAS, whether that's leveraging MATLAB. You can put them all onto the same library. Your users can do a search and pick the formula at will and bring it into Spotfire. Now, what does that mean for your data scientists? Well, they would need to come in here and say, I would like to go and publish and a function to that library. This is where they would come in. This is where you leverage your data scientist that does know R, that does know SAS, that does know MATLAB. They would create a new and register a new function. They would enter the appropriate script. Here's a very simple example of an R script. They define what inputs are going to be fed by Spotfire and what outputs are going to be spit out or returned by this algorithm or this data function. And then those results come right back into Spotfire to incorporate in the analysis. So this method is how you would leverage that data scientist. So your data scientists, we're not trying to change the way that they analyze their data, whether they're using R, whether they're using MATLAB, or they're using SAS. We can leverage whatever they have, create a nice little wrapper into this data function, and empower your citizen data scientists so they can incorporate into the workflow and create something like this. And one more example, if you have so even for your data scientists that want to run multiple models, you can use Spotfire to test your different hypotheses, to test and run your different models, and then take all of those results and visualize them in Spotfire. So here's an example of an analysis that is targeting your data scientists. So again, depending on who you are, Spotfire as a platform can help you, go further than your static, dashboard or your flat dashboard. You can have a true interactive analysis. Lou?
Thank you, Hector. That was fantastic. And so I think Hector did a great job of illustrating these points, which is Spotfire provides value across the spectrum of users. That whether you're a citizen data scientist who's just starting off and wants to use out-of-the-box tools for data wrangling, smart visualization, and predictive modeling, or if you're looking to increase your skills and you're willing to take on a bit of R scripting to enhance your analysis, Spotfire has the capabilities making it both easy to get started as well as helping you develop your capabilities over time into richer and richer analytic depth. For data scientists, it helps you not only visualize your predictive models, as Hector just showed there at the end, but also helps take the IP that you've created, the scripts, the predictive models, making that available to a wider audience. And for the general population, it's easy in Spotfire to create applications that can be used by these general users, that allow these general users to do what if, to apply their business knowledge without really having to deal with the analytic complexity behind the scenes. Now, in order to make this all easy for the citizen data scientists, we have a rich machine learning capability on the TIBCO community site, many capabilities there that you can download to get started with. And then finally, before we wrap up, I want to touch on streaming analytics in Spotfire. It's easy to combine real-time visualizations into a Spotfire analysis, where you can leverage not only the real-time visualizations, but apply alerts on that streaming data and combine that with a deeper Spotfire visualization for deeper context, and then drill down for root cause analysis. So for example, you can configure the system such that if something important happens in the real-time stream, you can automatically create a Spotfire analysis that will provide context for that, send an alert to a user so they can drill down and say, well, what was the cause of that alert? What was the cause of that event? Is this something to be concerned about or not? This is all done with streaming analytics, applications that you can build using low or no code workflows that you can use to access, transform, and act on your real-time data, all within the TIBCO Insight platform. And so in order to make this even easier for our customers and to pull together these pieces of both looking at historical data and streaming data, we've got a number of accelerators that tie together these applications into smart solutions, all available on our community site as well. And so to wrap up, Spotfire helps you go beyond pretty pictures, beyond just simple charts. With smart visual analytics, providing linked views, smart recommendations, smart mapping capabilities, and the ability to build analytic applications that you can share with others. Provides data wrangling so that you can iteratively analyze and wrangle your data together, really wrestle with your data to get the best insight out of it in a way that automatically documents itself. Hector showed us there at the end many of the smart tools that are available within Spotfire, both tools for the citizen data scientist to use out of the box, and then how we make it easy to leverage the productivity of our community, leverage the work of other data scientists in your organizations, whether they're working within R or some other environment, and the many robust community resources that are available to support that. Touch briefly on streaming analytics and how easy it is to create linked alerts and actions and real-time visualizations, wrapped up within solution accelerators so that you can combine the real-time data with your historical data in Spotfire very easily, and all on a platform that's simple to deploy and administrate and scale out. And so with that, I'm going to wrap up the presentation portion and happy to hand it back off to Bill to organize the Q&A.
Well, Hector, Lou, thanks so much for that excellent presentation. We'll get started with today's Q&A session. And I want to thank the audience for their participation. We've had a lot of questions that have come in during this presentation, and we'll do our best to get through all of them in the time remaining. So during this Q&A session, I'll leave up this screen with contact information for Hector and Lou if you'd like to contact them following today's webinar. So let's get started. Lou, Hector, question from the audience. It says, I'm looking for a front end to share with others for some of the predictive models that I've created. Can I use Spotfire for that?
Absolutely. As we touched on some and Hector showed, it's easy to create, take the predictive models that your data scientist has created or, other related analytic scripts, wrap them behind a Spotfire application, parameterize them with, say, controls within Spotfire, visualize the results,
and really help that wider audience kind of leverage the power of those predictive analytics without really having to deal with the complexity of them behind the scenes.
Terrific. Terrific. Thank you so much. A number of our audience members asked if you would please identify the version of Spotfire that you used in the demo. Apparently, you've added a bunch of features, and they were impressed.
Hector, what version did you use?
Sure. So this is version 7.7. There was a couple of functionality in 7.8 that I didn't leverage, but most of this is using 7.7. As you noticed, some of the new functionalities was some of the map and some of the inline data wrangling capabilities. But 7.7, if you use 7.7 and beyond, everything that I've shown here, you can do it out of the box.
Well, thanks for that clarification. Now, TIBCO obviously does a number of different things, though the graphics are obviously a key focus. Can you compare, please, TIBCO to some of the other popular viz programs like Tableau and Click?
Sure. I think among the most powerful differences with Spotfire is the data science capabilities that we focused on in this presentation. The rich interactivity, the rich integration, the ability to, for one thing, be able to leverage R out of the box through our native TERR engine that's embedded within Spotfire, as opposed with some other systems where you have to download and separately install and configure integration with an environment like R. So that's one key capability. I think, secondly, the richness of the dashboards and analytic applications that we create, as well as a lot of the data wrangling capability. But historically, well, not historically, in general, it's the data science capability that really has distinguished us for quite a while. And then secondly, the streaming capability. That unlike many other platforms, TIBCO has a rich history around real-time data and streaming analytics that we're bringing together with our Spotfire visualization platform.
Yeah, I thought that streaming example was very interesting. Can you speak a little bit more about how the real-time streaming works in Spotfire?
Sure thing. There's a couple of different ways to use it. The simplest is that Spotfire, one of our TIBCO products is called Live Data Mart. It's our real-time data cache that a number of our real-time products can send data to. So Spotfire can connect directly to Live Data Mart, visualize that real-time data in there to look at that most current data. Secondly, you can mash up real-time visualizations with Spotfire visualizations, as I showed briefly in that dashboard, so you can see both historical data and what's happening right now side by side, link them together and interact with them. And then also within our streaming applications, you can automatically call out to Spotfire automation services, which is Spotfire's server for kind of generating an analysis on the fly in an automatic way, that in response to some event that happens in the real-time stream, you can update a Spotfire analysis, send an alert to someone to say, take a look at this, something significant happened, and here's the historical context for you to understand whether that event is meaningful or not, or of concern or not.
Those are very cool capabilities. And by the way,
and then one last one
sure,
is
sorry.
that our TIBCO R engine is embedded both in our real-time environments and directly within Spotfire, which means that you can, within Spotfire, build a predictive model and test it with using TERR, and then take that predictive model and directly put it into your real-time streaming analytics application, because the same engine is available there. So without having to recode what you've done, you can take that insight that you've developed within Spotfire and apply that to score real-time streaming data and take actions and make decisions automatically in real time.
Well, thank you for that clarification. Now, clearly the element that makes TIBCO stand apart, or at least one of them, is your ability to do modeling directly in the platform. And you have this proprietary R engine called TERR. Can you tell us how TERR differs from standard R?
Sure. Unlike other vendors that have basically taken open source R and done a modified distribution of it, TERR is our implementation of an R engine. TIBCO is the makers of S+, which is a closely related commercial environment. And we took that 20-plus years of expertise of S+, and built a new R engine from the ground up. And so TERR is optimized for big in-memory data sets, optimized for performance, optimized for stability and robustness, which is what really allows us to embed it tightly within our platform, as well as license it to partners who wish to OEM it within theirs.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Now, as a data scientist, I was particularly interested in the front end of your presentation where you talked about data wrangling. Is the phrase that you use, data wrangling, is that the same that we would interpret to mean data prep?
So mostly, but there is definitely a different nuance to it. That often data prep is kind of has this connotation of a waterfall process. If I prep my data and then I visualize it. And if I don't have what I need to go upstream, perhaps to another tool that someone's using for the data prep, perhaps to IT to do changes within the database. And so really kind of the difference with data wrangling is that this is an iterative process that you're doing as part of the analysis. That, as you're visualizing something, rather than having to step out of your visualization product into a data prep product or go all the way upstream to IT, you can do that directly and iteratively, which makes it a much more efficient and immersive process.
Yeah, that would certainly be convenient to be able to do that. Now, if I have a team of data scientists and they are producing custom functions and we put them into Spotfire, are those all going into a central repository so they're available to all users, or do you push those out to individual users?
We manage them through a central repository called the Spotfire library. And they certainly can be available to all users, or we've got typical user control techniques so that if you want these things available only to a subset of your users, we can certainly control that. But generally, they get pushed out to the Spotfire library, published there, and then they can be embedded in applications where these applications might be running on somebody's desktop or running on the web, but they can be all calling these same centralized versions of the analytics.
Okay, well, thank you for that clarification. Now, question from the audience about scaling. Can you comment on any limits to scaling or unlimited scaling that Spotfire might be capable of?
Certainly, it scales out to huge data. I guess there's both scaling to data size and scaling to number of users. So, from a scaling to data size, we've got an extremely efficient in-memory engine where, if you're working in a system with a lot of memory, Spotfire can handle that and visualize it directly. For bigger data, Spotfire sits on top of in-database, in-data lake sources so that you're working within Spotfire, but you are visualizing data that never leaves your database or never leaves your Spark cluster. And that's really the way to kind of scale. In that case, you're doing aggregations, you're doing visualizations, changing how you look at the data, but those calculations get pushed down to the data source, and only the results of those calculations get pulled out, so that you can really scale to any size of big data.
And the key there is to be able to do both of those interactively, and that's what we leverage the on-demand. So as a user, you can look at data, whether that data is in memory or that data is aggregated. At any point, the user can mark records and on-demand dynamically generate another pool for either from the same data source or a different data source altogether to do a drill down dynamically.
Well, Hector, Lou, thank you for some great answers to some very good questions. And for those of you that asked questions that weren't answered today, we'll be sending all the unanswered questions to Hector and Lou and the TIBCO team so they can follow up with you after today's webinar. I have just a few quick announcements. If you'd please mark your calendars for May 23rd, that's our next DSC webinar, which will be Self-Service Analytics Case Study, Accelerating Speed to Insight by Alteryx. Also, remember that today's taping will be available for on-demand viewing later today, and you can find that on the home page of Data Science Central in the Webinar tab, which is located at the top of the page. Well, this brings today's webinar to a close, and I'd like to thank our audience for their attendance and thoughtful questions. And a special thanks again to TIBCO for their sponsorship and our speakers today, Hector Martinez and Lou Bajak-Jorgen, for their insights into today's topic. My name is Bill Voorhees. I'm very pleased to have been your host for today's event. I look forward to seeing you all again on May 23rd. Have a great day.
Thank you.